Her daughter changed the locks on the home Marla built. Kendra called it necessary, then hosted a wine tasting in Marla's dining room. By Monday, Kendra's name was erased from the deed, the will, and the future. She'd moved in after a breakup. She stayed out of entitlement, but Marla had one final guest list, and Kendra wasn't on it. When the buyer toured during the party, only one woman knew it was her last supper. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The third tug wasn't just physical. It burned. Marla stumbled half a step behind, catching herself on the edge of a planter outside the shoe store. Her arm throbbed, a dull ache blooming beneath her cardigan sleeve. People passed, but one man paused. Young, bearded, expression caught somewhere between confusion and pity. Kendra didn't notice, or didn't care. "Act your age for once," she snapped, loud enough to bounce off the polished tile and hit every eardrum in a 30-foot radius. Marla straightened slowly, brushing invisible lint from her sleeve as if reclaiming her dignity, piece by piece. "I am acting my age," she murmured, but it got swallowed in the clamor of mall traffic. Kendra was already ahead, typing into her phone like she hadn't just publicly shamed her own mother. Her heels clicked with irritation, not apology. Marla followed, but this time at her own pace. The cold mall air hummed with artificial brightness. She smelled cinnamon pretzels, heard a toddler crying somewhere near the food court, and felt the pressure of all the unseen eyes that had watched her daughter treat her like baggage. Again. They'd only come for an afternoon walk. Marla had thought it might be nice, maybe pick up new reading glasses or wander through the home decor store. Instead, she'd been dragged like an afterthought, scolded like a child, and ultimately forgotten. By the time they reached the parking garage, silence hung between them. Kendra tossed the keys into Marla's lap. "You drive," she said flatly, already digging into her purse. "I've got a call." The drive home was 20 minutes of quiet engine hum and Kendra whispering dramatic updates to someone named Lindsay about a promotion and how exhausting it is having her around all the time. When they pulled into the driveway, Kendra slammed the car door hard enough to rattle the windows. Marla didn't follow her inside. Not right away. She sat in the parked car, hands trembling just slightly on the steering wheel, her shoulders still sore. Outside, the house looked deceptively peaceful. Blue shutters, blooming hydrangeas, a wind chime tinkling gently in the porch breeze. But something inside her shifted. That night, after Kendra had curled up on the couch with a glass of wine and her phone, barely saying a word, Marla stood alone in the kitchen. The overhead light flickered slightly, casting long shadows over the countertop. She opened the second drawer on the right. Past the takeout menus, underneath an old birthday card from a neighbor long moved away, lay a worn manila folder. She hadn't touched it in years. Her hands hesitated before lifting it out like it was made of glass. Inside, the deed. Her name. Only hers. The paper smelled faintly of ink and lemon furniture polish, like a memory of control. Kendra had moved in temporarily after the divorce, saying she just needed a few months to regroup. That was 4 years ago. Since then, she'd taken over the master bedroom, filled the dining room with her company's marketing posters, and turned the garage into a boutique storage overflow. Once, she'd introduced a guest as if Marla were her tenant. Another time, she'd casually mentioned repainting her home office, which happened to be Marla's study. But tonight was different. Marla ran her hand over the embossed edge of the document and closed the folder slowly, like a book she was finally ready to finish. She replaced it carefully, not hidden, but placed with purpose. She didn't need to yell, argue, or explain. The paper spoke louder than Kendra ever had. The next morning, she made French toast just like always, drizzling syrup with the same hands that had once braided Kendra's hair for ballet recitals. Nothing visibly changed, but inside her, a quiet decision had crystallized. Later that afternoon, Marla passed the living room as Kendra paced, phone pressed to her cheek. "Yeah?" Kendra laughed, pausing to sip from her wineglass. "This place will be mine soon anyway." The stemware clinked like wind chimes as Kendra arranged the table, her smile crisp and performative. Marla stood just off to the side, holding a folded cloth napkin she wasn't sure where to place anymore. The smell of roasted rosemary chicken wafted through the air, competing with the citrus and sage candle Kendra had lit in every room, as if scent could mask truth. 8 guests filed in, all in their early 30s, all professionally dressed. Finance types, judging by the talk of IPOs and retirement strategies no one actually intended to follow. Kendra's voice went up a register, more polished, less daughterly. "Welcome, welcome," she said, waving them into Marla's dining room like it was a showroom. "Make yourselves at home, my home, that is." Marla blinked. Kendra didn't look at her, didn't introduce her. Instead, she nodded vaguely in Marla's direction like gesturing to hired help. "And this is Marla. She's a longtime family friend, practically like a second mom." Second mom. Not her mother. A woman with sharp lipstick and tighter heels leaned in. "Wow, you've got great taste, Kendra. Where'd you find that painting?" Kendra swirled her wine, flashing a practiced smile. "It was my late father's. He had an eye for color. I keep it here to feel close to him." Marla stood frozen in place, gripping the edge of a placemat to steady herself. Her ex-husband wasn't dead. He lived 3 towns over, remarried to a woman who volunteered at the botanical garden. Marla wanted to say something, anything, but the lie wasn't the point. The erasure was. So she let it ride. Dinner passed in a blur of compliments, clinks, and curated anecdotes. Marla served the food like a ghost, refilling water glasses, fetching extra forks, wiping crumbs no one noticed. She smiled politely, her face aching from restraint. Every comment about Kendra's stunning home landed like a slap on her skin, invisible but undeniable. No one asked about Marla, and Kendra never offered. After the last guest left, 2 hugs, 3 promises of brunch, 1 spilled drop of wine on the entryway rug, Kendra floated upstairs like a victorious host on a cloud of validation. Her voice echoed down the stairs. "Don't worry about cleanup, Marla. You're a lifesaver." Marla didn't answer. She didn't need to. The kitchen was a war zone of empty glasses and half-eaten tiramisu. The dishwasher groaned as she loaded it, steam fogging her glasses. She moved slowly, methodically, not because she was tired, but because clarity had arrived, and clarity demanded a certain kind of ritual. She wiped the marble countertops clean, then dried her hands on the embroidered towel her sister had gifted her the year before she passed. Then she walked to the small office nook off the den. Kendra had tossed mail there for months, never opening anything not addressed to her. Marla powered up her old laptop. The familiar whir was oddly comforting. The glow of the screen cut across the dark like a lighthouse. She opened a new tab and typed with steady fingers. "For sale by owner. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, colonial. Move-in ready." She paused, then added, "Showings by appointment only. Do not disturb occupants." There it was. A beginning, not of escape, but of recovery. The creak of a floorboard upstairs snapped her head up. Footsteps padded down the hallway, quick, careless. Kendra's scent reached first. Lavender body spray and white wine. The screen was still open. The cursor blinked. Marla's breath hitched. Kendra's voice, casual and clueless. "Hey, have you seen my—" Marla slammed the laptop shut, spinning around with a smile far too quick to be natural. "Tea," she blurted. "Just making tea." Kendra raised a brow but didn't question it. "Cool," she muttered, turning back upstairs. "Don't forget to turn off the lights when you're done." Next morning, Marla zipped her coat to her chin, the autumn wind biting just enough to feel personal. The sidewalk beneath her sneakers was damp from last night's drizzle, scattered with brittle leaves that crackled underfoot. She wasn't power walking. She didn't need steps on an app. This was a walk of intent. 2 blocks down, near the edge of the subdivision, a slate blue SUV idled in front of a bungalow with a "Sold" sign still stuck crookedly in the yard. Marla paused, then turned, almost casually, onto the driveway. A young woman stepped out of the vehicle, clipboard in hand, blazer pressed, but boots muddy. "Lena Whitaker," she said with a warm grin. "You must be Marla Jensen." They shook hands. "I don't want signs," Marla said before the woman could launch into her pitch. "No flyers. No open houses. just private showings. Quiet ones. Lena tilted her head thoughtfully. You're the sole deed holder, correct? Marla reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded photocopy. Crisp. Notarized. I am. No liens. Paid off in '06, Lena gave a low whistle. This place'll move within days, especially if it's off market. You're in a sweet pocket of inventory drought. Marla nodded once. I want it listed by tomorrow. And just like that, the wheels began turning. By the time she returned home, Kendra had already left for work, her mug still half full on the counter, lipstick stain bleeding into the rim. The hallway smelled like her boyfriend's aftershave, one of those overcompensating blends. Citrus, musk, ego. He'd stayed the night again. Third time this week. Marla hadn't said a word, but the creak in the ceiling when he walked barefoot to the bathroom in the middle of the night made her grind her teeth in bed. It wasn't his weight, it was the assumption. Later that afternoon, while folding a basket of towels, she noticed the hall closet door ajar. Something off-white was stuffed halfway into a black garbage bag. Marla stepped closer and pulled the item free. Her heirloom clock, the one her grandmother gave her when she turned 30. Brass corners, Roman numerals. The softest chime at the top of the hour, once so familiar it became background music to her entire marriage, now stuffed between old pillows and a sweatshirt that wasn't hers. She didn't cry. She didn't even feel rage. She just wrapped it in a dish towel, tucked it into a cardboard box, and taped it shut with the same calm precision she used to wrap birthday gifts for ungrateful people. By Thursday, she'd packed 5 boxes. Books, jewelry, framed photos she hadn't looked at in years. Kendra thought she was decluttering. Minimalism was trendy now. That night, Marla pulled into the rear lot of a climate-controlled storage facility and entered the code Lena had texted her. The metal door hummed open. Her heels echoed across the concrete as she wheeled in a dolly, box stacked on box. No questions, no audience. Just silence and ownership. Back at home, the dishwasher hummed, and Kendra was upstairs laughing on FaceTime. Marla passed the living room, eyeing a small patch of wall where her wedding portrait used to hang. Kendra had replaced it with a generic live, laugh, love print. The irony didn't escape her. Friday morning, Lena's name popped up on her phone with a short, polite buzz. Lena, first serious buyer wants a walkthrough, Sunday at 1. Does that work? Marla's finger hovered over the reply button when Kendra breezed into the kitchen in a silk robe. Don't make plans Sunday, she chirped. I'm hosting that wine tasting. Braden's friend from corporate is coming, and I need you out of the way. Marla typed back, Sunday at 1 is perfect. Then set her phone down, poured her coffee, and smiled into the mug. Marla lit the last candle on the mantel with deliberate calm, even as laughter spilled in from the driveway. Tires crunched over gravel. Car doors slammed. Kendra's voice rang out, crisp and performative. Just wait till you see the wine spread. I curated it myself. Curated. Marla adjusted the throw pillows one final time and turned toward the front door. She didn't answer it. That wasn't her role today. Not in Kendra's script. She moved silently to the hallway, where Lena stood in a pressed black coat, clipboard in hand, flanked by a clean-cut man in tortoise-shell glasses and an oversized Patagonia vest. Hi, Mrs. Jensen, Lena whispered, eyes scanning the echoing sounds of high heels and laughter from the kitchen. This is Derek. He's an all-cash buyer, prefers to see it as is, no staging. Perfect. Kendra's wine event had already begun to bloom in the living room. A long oak table glittered with rows of glass bottles, tasting cards and cheese platters so meticulously arranged they looked torn from a magazine spread. A Bluetooth speaker pulsed jazz piano softly beneath the chatter. Marla smiled and waved Lena and Derek inside. They stepped in like tourists, shoes brushing over the edge of the welcome mat Kendra had bought last fall. This house runs on love and Merlot. The irony was thicker than the candle wax on the dining table. Halfway through the hallway tour, Derek paused beside the stairs. Is the measuring tape on the banister yours? Lena recovered smoothly. Just part of our notes for square footage verification. But guests noticed. A woman in red lipstick leaned toward Kendra, pointing. Is someone remodeling, or is this on the market? Kendra's laugh was brittle. No, this is my house, just a design refresh. Vintage farmhouse vibe. Marla led Derek toward the formal dining room, deliberately slow. The tension followed like perfume, too strong to ignore, too polite to mention. Kendra's eyes narrowed as she poured another glass of Pinot Noir. As Lena detailed ceiling height and original crown molding, Marla caught a muffled shriek of laughter from the living room. The contrast was intoxicating. Then footsteps, fast, irritated. Kendra appeared in the kitchen archway like a storm cloud in heels. "What the hell are you doing?" she hissed under her breath, yanking Marla aside just enough to bruise intention, not skin. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Marla blinked calmly. "Hosting," she said, "like you taught me." Kendra's face twitched, but she swallowed it with a tight smile and returned to her guests. In the hallway, Derek ran his fingers along the fireplace mantel. "This layout," he said, nodding appreciatively. "It's rare, clean, updated, but not stripped of soul." He glanced at Marla. "Feels like it's been lived in with love, not just flipped." Marla smiled gently. "It has." By 1:45, the wine glasses clinked a little louder, the hallway fell quiet again, and Derek shook Lena's hand. "I'll submit a full-price offer before 5. I won't play games. I want this one." He turned to Marla. "It feels intentional, like it belongs to someone who knew when to stay and when to go." Marla held his gaze. "Exactly right." Kendra spent the rest of the afternoon avoiding eye contact, but Marla caught her watching from the staircase window when Lena and Derek drove off, wine still in hand, fury barely suppressed beneath the rosé. Marla didn't gloat. She didn't explain. Instead, she gathered empty plates and began washing them, humming faintly under her breath, like it was any other Sunday. At 4:56 p.m., her phone buzzed. "Lena. Offer submitted. Full asking. No contingencies. Congrats." Marla set the phone down without a smile, but a deep, private exhale filled the quiet space around her. The notification pinged just after sunrise. Offer accepted. Closing scheduled. 30 days. Marla read the email twice, the morning light pouring through the blinds like quiet applause. The steam from her tea curled upward in delicate threads as she sat at the breakfast table, the same table where Kendra once spilled orange juice and cried over prom rejection, where later she bragged about landing a digital marketing job too good for Midwest pay. Now the contract sat signed on the screen, and Marla sat still, but powerful. Upstairs the shower ran. Kendra's voice carried through the pipes, singing off-key, unbothered, like nothing had shifted, but something had, irrevocably. By mid-afternoon the illusion cracked. Kendra's voice sliced through the silence, a furious whip from the top of the staircase. "You sold the house?" Marla didn't flinch. She looked up from her book, Gardens of the Pacific Northwest, one of her late favorites, and set it gently on the armrest. "How did you find out?" she asked calmly. "I was searching escrow records for Braden's property analysis. Your address came up. You've got it listed under contract?" Her eyes were wild. "You can't just sell this house." "It's mine to sell," Marla said evenly, standing. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was immovable. "I've already signed. The offer's been accepted." Kendra barreled down the stairs, barefoot, still in athletic leggings and a crop sweatshirt. "You didn't even tell me. You didn't ask. Where am I supposed to go?" Marla stepped into the kitchen, letting the moment stretch between them like elastic pulled too tight. She opened a drawer, pulled out a folder, placed it gently on the counter. "You were never a tenant, Kendra," she said. "You never signed a lease, never paid rent. You asked to stay here for 6 months. It's been 4 years. Kendra's eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't dare kick out your own daughter." Marla didn't blink. "I'm not kicking you out. I'm selling my home." Kendra crossed her arms. "I've lived here. I've made improvements. That wall art, that patio furniture, I invested in this place. And I paid the property taxes," Marla replied. "Every year, alone." Kendra's lips curled. I'll call a lawyer. Emotional equity is a thing. You can't just erase me from everything. Marla opened the folder, removed a fresh, notarized copy of the deed, slid it across the granite countertop like a chess move she'd planned for years. Funny thing about legal documents, she said. They're immune to delusion. Kendra stared at the paper. Her name was nowhere. Marla didn't gloat, but she didn't soften either. I built this house with your father when we still believed in forever, she said. I painted the trim with my own hands. I picked every cabinet knob. You've been playing homeowner, but the title never changed hands. Silence. Thick, punctuated only by the hum of the fridge. Kendra opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time in years, she looked small. I thought I had more time, she said finally, voice shaky. You've had years, Marla said, and not 1 month of rent. The seconds ticked. A full minute passed. Then Marla walked toward the staircase and picked up the car keys from the bowl. I suggest you start packing. Kendra didn't follow, just stood frozen, fingers trembling against the countertop. At the doorway, Marla paused, looked over her shoulder. And Kendra? Her daughter looked up, red blotching across her cheeks. Marla's voice cut clean and low. Act your age and move. The echo still lingered, wood against frame, that sharp crack of finality. Marla had stood at the bottom of the staircase when Kendra did it, arms crossed, the night air bleeding in through the half-closed front door. No apology, no glance back, just fury in motion. She let the silence settle like dust. By 8 a.m., the locksmiths arrived, 2 of them, young and efficient. Their truck hummed in the driveway while the garage door rose with a smooth mechanical sigh. Marla greeted them in a soft gray cardigan and her walking shoes. Code access only, she said simply, handing over the printed order. The younger one raised an eyebrow. Bad breakup? Marla didn't answer. She just held the front door open and gestured them inside. They replaced the deadbolts first, matte black digitals with silent motors and smartphone sync, then the keypad on the garage entry, followed by a discreet security camera tucked beneath the porch awning. The sound of drills and the faint scent of scorched metal filled the morning air, mixing with the smell of wet pine and early dew. Every click of a screw tightened something inside her. By noon, it was done. From her phone, Marla tapped into the new security app. A small window popped up, a live feed of the porch, her garage, even the side path by the garden. Crisp, clean video. No blind spots. No more guesswork. She took her tea out back and watched the wind flirt with the oak leaves. Her house, hers, felt quieter, more deliberate. Even the creaks in the floorboards upstairs seemed to have softened. At 9:41 that night, motion activated the camera. Kendra's headlights flooded the front walk. Her heels clacked up the steps with practiced confidence. She jiggled the handle once, twice, nothing. She rang the doorbell. Inside, Marla sat on the couch, remote in hand, heart steady. The doorbell chimed again, longer this time. Then came the pounding, sharp, rhythmic, like accusation wrapped in desperation. "Mom!" Kendra shouted, voice already tight. "Open the door!" Marla watched her through the app. Blonde hair slightly windblown, jaw clenched, makeup just beginning to fade under the porch light. "Seriously!" Kendra barked. "What is this?" Marla tapped the microphone icon. Her voice, calm and deliberate, came through the speaker above the door. "You're welcome to knock, not to demand." Kendra froze. She looked up at the camera like she could claw it down. "You changed the locks on me? You locked me out of my own—" "It was never yours," Marla interrupted. "And you're not locked out, you're outside. That's different." Silence, then venom. "This is elder abuse. You're not in your right mind. This is illegal. I'm calling someone." "Please do," Marla said, and ended the transmission. Kendra stood there another 5 minutes. She called someone, judging by the way her mouth moved and her arms flailed. But no one came. Eventually, she stormed down the porch steps, heels scraping, and sat fuming in her car. Lights on, engine running. The neighbors peeked through their blinds. Mrs. Vasquez across the street actually stepped out onto her porch with her little Shih Tzu tucked under one arm. Marla didn't care. This wasn't scandal. It was liberation. By morning, Kendra was gone. No note, no apology. Just her robe on the banister and half a bottle of overpriced serum left behind on the bathroom sink. Marla brewed her coffee with the quiet confidence of a woman who no longer needed to explain herself. Then she opened her contacts and tapped the name at the top, Lydia Cohen, estate attorney. By noon, they were on a call. "I want everything updated," Marla said. "Will, health proxy, power of attorney, no joint anything, no loopholes." Lydia exhaled with approval. "You ready for blowback? I've already changed the locks. Let the paperwork match the reality." They reviewed the details, one by one. Marla listened with her chin lifted slightly, pen in hand, every signature a silent declaration. At 4:07 p.m., her phone buzzed with a legal notice. Subject: temporary restraining order request. Filed claim: elder abuse, emotional coercion. The conference room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and tension. Pale morning light filtered through the vertical blinds, striping the carpet like prison bars. Marla sat with her hands folded, nails trimmed, wrists still. Her teacup, brought from home and filled with Earl Grey from a thermos, sat untouched at her side. Her lawyer, Lydia, leaned in slightly, lips pressed in a silent line of readiness. Across the table, Kendra dabbed at the corner of her eye with a tissue she hadn't needed until the mediator walked in. Kendra's voice caught, thin and breathy. "I've been trying to help my mother for years. She's confused. She's been declining. She forgets things. She changed the locks while I was at work." Her voice cracked with perfect timing. Marla said nothing. The mediator, a sharp-eyed woman in a steel-gray dress, scribbled something on her legal pad. Kendra sniffled again, glancing over at Lydia. "I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this because I love her, but she's being taken advantage of, manipulated." "By whom?" Lydia asked, her voice smooth and surgical. "She lives alone." Kendra blinked. Marla took a slow sip of tea. Finally, "Would you like to see evidence?" Lydia asked. The mediator nodded once. Lydia opened the manila folder in front of her and began laying items on the table. One by one, like cards in a high-stakes poker game. Bank statements with Marla's name. Utility bills, electric, water, internet, all in Marla's name. Screenshots of text messages complete with timestamps, security footage of Kendra screaming on the porch, a digital copy of the notarized deed, Marla's name alone. The room tilted. Not literally, but energetically. Kendra's performance began to sag at the edges, her mouth slightly open, her hand motionless in mid-dab with the tissue. The mediator skimmed through each document carefully, nodding to herself. "And these security clips," Lydia added, pressing a button on her tablet, "show Ms. Jensen responding calmly to her daughter's aggression, not the other way around." Kendra's eyes darted between them. "She edited those. Anyone can edit a video. They're time-stamped and backed up to cloud storage. Chain of custody is intact," Lydia replied flatly. The mediator set her pen down. "I've heard enough." Kendra straightened like she was about to defend herself again, but the mediator raised a hand. "Your claims don't meet the legal threshold for abuse or manipulation. They're based on entitlement, not evidence. You do not own the home. You do not pay rent. You are not on any legal document associated with the property. This appears to be a conflict of boundaries, not coercion." Silence hit the room like a gavel. Kendra blinked. Twice. Her jaw flexed, but no words came. The mediator looked to Marla. "Would you like to request a no-contact condition?" Marla tilted her head gently, like she was considering a recipe she'd made 1,000 times. "Yes, for now." "Granted," the mediator said. 30 days. If she violates it, call the police." Kendra pushed her chair back sharply, the legs scraping the floor like an afterthought tantrum. "I can't believe this," she hissed. "You will," Marla said softly, not looking up. By the time they exited the building, the sky had opened slightly, gray and humid, like weather trying to decide what it wanted. Marla walked slowly, the weight in her chest replaced with a quiet kind of clarity. No euphoria. Just peace. Back home, Lydia joined her at the kitchen table. Marla poured 2 cups of tea, one with a splash of honey. "The irrevocable trust is finalized," Lydia said. "The equity's locked. No contest clause is active. Even if she tries to challenge the sale, she gets nothing." Marla lifted her cup. "She wanted the house," she said with a quiet smile. "Now she can't even visit it." They toasted gently. Cups clinked. Later that evening, Marla logged into her email to check for a shipping update on a new wool throw she'd ordered, but instead, she saw the subject line glowing at the top of her inbox. Closing scheduled. Funds initiated. Marla opened the message, only to see a flagged alert. Buyer requested urgent phone call. Potential issue with disbursement. Marla stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by nothing but echoes. The hardwood floor stretched bare beneath her feet, freshly cleaned but still bearing the faint indentations of furniture long since hauled away. Dusty outlines marked where the bookcase had stood, where the corner armchair had leaned for years beneath a lamp that burned soft into too many late nights. Outside, the moving van hissed and clicked. Men in gloves maneuvered boxes down the ramp, shouting directions that bounced off the brick walls like distant thunder. Inside, Marla moved in silence. She passed the staircase slowly, brushing her fingertips along the banister as if reading Braille from her past. At the top of the landing, just before the hallway turned, hung a single frame, the only thing left on the walls. It was a photo. Kendra, age 10, beaming through missing front teeth, a chocolate smudge on her cheek, proudly holding a science fair ribbon upside down. Marla remembered the day. They'd eaten hot dogs in the car and laughed so hard she nearly missed the turn into the driveway. She reached up and took it down with steady hands. No tears, no ache, just closure. She slid it into the top of her handbag without ceremony and headed downstairs. Her keys, now obsolete, sat on the empty kitchen island next to a stack of labeled boxes bound for the storage unit. One of the movers gave her a nod as he returned for the last crate. "You sure you don't need help carrying anything else, ma'am?" She smiled faintly. I've carried enough for a lifetime." The front door creaked on its hinges one final time. A sound she had once found comforting now felt like a chapter creaking closed. A black SUV waited at the curb. The buyer's assistant stepped out crisply in a blazer and flats, holding a slim leather folder and a manila envelope. "Everything's in here," she said, passing it to Marla with both hands. "Certified check, transfer confirmation, and closing disclosures." Marla accepted it without flinching. "Smooth process," she said. "Very smooth. Your agent said you handled the sale like a pro." Marla turned back toward the porch one last time. The hydrangeas still bloomed at the base of the steps. The wind chime above the awning gave one soft tinkle as if saying goodbye. She walked to the car. It took just under 40 minutes to reach the lakeside condo. The sky opened as she drove, the kind of overcast that wasn't sad, just hushed. The road curved around a small inlet where ducks paddled in lazy formation and teenagers fished without much intent. Marla pulled into a private lot tucked behind a grove of cedar trees. The building was smaller than her old house, newer but without the sterile sterility of modern complexes. It had brick accents, ivy crawling up one column, and a welcome mat that didn't scream anything but simplicity. She unlocked the door with a short beep from a keypad only she knew the code to. Inside, calm, neutral tones, soft lighting, the faintest scent of new carpet and pine cleaner. She set her handbag down on the entry table and kicked off her shoes. The space was just big enough. 2 bedrooms, a den, and a kitchen with clean counters waiting to be cluttered on her terms. She walked to the sliding glass doors and opened them to the small balcony. The lake glittered below in quiet ripples, soft wind brushing her hair like fingers she hadn't invited but didn't mind. She exhaled. Then she opened the kitchen cabinet, pulled out the bottle of wine she'd packed last, an Oregon Pinot she'd been saving for a special moment, and popped the cork with steady grace. No music, no company, no noise, just the sound of peace. She poured herself a generous glass and raised it slightly toward the window. "To freedom," she whispered, then added, And finally being alone, without being lonely. Her phone buzzed once. Unknown number. Kendra. You owe me an explanation. Marla didn't answer right away. The glass of wine sat beside her, nearly empty. The moon shimmered over the lake like a curtain of mercury, soft and quiet. Her bare feet rested on the cool tile of the balcony, the gentle breeze brushing across her collarbone. She read the message again. It wasn't a question. It was a demand dressed as curiosity, a trap sealed in nostalgia. Marla walked back inside, phone in hand, and sat at the small writing desk beneath the window. She opened the notepad app, typed slowly, deliberately, each word a pebble in a shoe someone else had worn for too long. You had shelter. You had time. You had me. Now I have peace. She copied the lines, opened the text thread, pasted, sent, then hit block contact, and just like that, the signal died. Not in anger, in relief, her reflection in the dark screen. N showed a woman not wounded, but awake. Later that week, Marla stood in the community center lobby, eyeing the corkboard of flyers with half interest. Pottery, Tai Chi, beginner bridge. It all smelled faintly of lemon floor cleaner and distant ambition. Then she heard a voice behind her. First time, or scouting for a takeover? She turned to find a woman with shoulder-length gray curls, dark denim, and unapologetically red lipstick. Maybe late 60s, maybe timeless. First time, Marla said, not counting high school dances. The woman extended a hand. Rachel, Unit 2, B, Marla, 1 degree Celsius. Rachel nodded like she'd just been passed a confidential file. Well, 5C, I hope you like cinnamon rolls and blunt honesty. Over coffee the next morning, they talked about daughters, about disappointments, about the strange peace of mornings where no one expected anything from you except presence. Marla told the story, briefly, then in full. Rachel didn't blink, just sipped and said, "You're a legend." Marla laughed, unexpectedly. "I'm tired of being brave. I'd settle for being boring." "Sorry," Rachel shrugged. "Legend status is permanent." 2 weeks later, a new flyer appeared on the corkboard. Workshop series, Know Your Worth, Own Your Home, led by Marla Jensen and Rachel Bishop. Empowerment for women 60+. No legalese, no guilt, just strategy. Marla ran her fingers over the corner of the page as they hung it up. "You think anyone will come?" Rachel smiled. "They'll come for the knowledge. They'll stay for the stories." Marla's new ID arrived in the mail one bright Tuesday. She sliced the envelope open with a butter knife and pulled out the card. Same photo, same lines on her face, same eyes, but a new address, one no one else had memorized, one no one had borrowed. It felt complete. She drove to the credit union that afternoon and sat across from a teller named Marcus, who typed like he was solving a crime. "Would you like to add a cosigner to the trust account?" Marla didn't hesitate. No joint access, no beneficiaries under 50. Marcus blinked. "You got it." She walked out with a fresh checkbook in one hand and a new folder labeled The Jensen Trust in the other. Outside, a wind picked up over the lake. Cool, confident, like it knew something no one had dared speak aloud. That evening, she returned home to a small stack of mail tucked neatly in her doorframe. Most of it was dull, flyers, coupons, a utility bill. But one envelope stood out. No name, no return address, no handwriting. Just cream cardstock, heavy and expensive. Her name was printed on a sticker label, slightly off-center. She opened it on the balcony. Inside, a wedding invitation. Kendra's wedding. The location was a vineyard 2 states away. The design was gold leaf and pale blush roses. The RSVP card was tucked inside with a generic line. "We hope you can join us on this special day." No handwritten note, no phone call, no apology, just postage. Marla ran her finger along the embossed initials, K and B. The RSVP card sat on Marla's desk for 2 full days, unopened except for the one moment she flipped it over and read the soft pencil scrawl, "Please don't ruin this." It wasn't an invitation, it was a warning, a veiled plea from a daughter who wanted silence, not reconciliation. Marla didn't cry, she didn't fume. She just pressed the card between two hardcover books, flattening it like something delicate and poisonous, and pulled open the top drawer of her file cabinet. From a blue leather folder, she removed two items, her updated will and the notarized affidavit attached to it. The ink had barely dried. She slid the papers into a crisp manila envelope, then, on a fresh note card, wrote in slow, deliberate script, "You removed me emotionally. I followed legally. Congratulations." Mom. No flourish. No guilt. She slipped the card inside, then sealed the envelope shut with a firm line of her palm. At the post office, she paid extra for certified delivery. Signature required. The clerk asked, "Need a return receipt?" "No," Marla said. "Just proof it arrived." She didn't check her phone for 2 days. Not once. Not out of avoidance, but out of discipline. Out of strength. When she finally turned it back on, the texts hit like a minor flood. Unknown number. How could you send that? Unknown number. Braden's parents are furious. Unknown number. This is not the time to make a scene. And then one from a name she hadn't seen in years. Cheryl Hastings. Kendra's Facebook is blowing up. Someone leaked the letter. I always thought she was selfish, but this. Marla scrolled. The posts were public, or had been, until the comments turned. Screenshots spread fast. One showed a photo of the wedding invite, paired with the phrase, "Imagine erasing your mom, then expecting her to clap for you." Another, "This is what entitlement looks like. Apple cider toast to Marla, whoever she is." A third, just 4 lines, quoted word for word from Marla's message. "You had shelter. You had time. You had me. Now, I have peace." Below it, 1.2K likes and a growing comment section full of strangers saying things like, "Where's her TED Talk?" and "legend behavior." Marla didn't react. She didn't even smile. Not quite. She just set the phone face down, walked into the kitchen, and called Rachel. That night, they dined at a quiet bistro by the water. Dim lighting, soft piano, cloth napkins folded like swans. No fanfare. Rachel raised her glass of chilled apple cider. "To peace," she said. Marla clinked hers gently. "And proper paperwork." They laughed, soft and unapologetic. Between bites of grilled salmon and roasted asparagus, Rachel asked, "Do you regret it?" Marla shook her head. "I regret waiting so long." Rachel leaned in. "You know, I had a daughter like that once. I was softer back then, softer than you, and it cost me everything." "What changed?" "I did." Rachel paused. "But not before she took the house and left me in a studio apartment with a broken radiator and a bag of guilt." Marla sipped slowly. "We're not alone." "No," Rachel said, "but we're finally unburdened." By the time she returned to her condo, Marla felt something she hadn't in years, centered. She sat by the window, watching headlights cross the far shoreline like flickering fireflies. Her reflection in the glass was sharp, clear, and unashamed. The phone buzzed on the table. Unknown caller. She almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. But something, a flicker of instinct, told her to answer. "Marla Jensen?" the voice asked. Professional, calm, male. "Yes?" "This is Ryan Barker from Gray Ledger Weekly. We've been covering stories on estate protection and family estrangement. What you sent your daughter? It's making the rounds online." Marla raised an eyebrow. "I don't do interviews." "I understand. But people are asking for your name. They're calling you a symbol of elder empowerment. Would you consider telling your story? In your own words?" She paused. The wind picked up outside, rustling the trees beyond her balcony. She accepted for the next week. The lights above the camera were too bright, hot but sterile, like truth serum for the skin. Marla blinked once and sat taller in the metal chair, her hands resting gently in her lap. No rings, no props. The journalist adjusted his recorder. "And what made you decide to speak out?" Marla paused, then said calmly, "Because silence doesn't protect dignity. It just extends damage." He didn't write that down. He didn't need to. The article was meant to be a sidebar. A 1-column feature in the Haven Herald under the Living Wise section, wedged between retirement tips and oatmeal cookie recipes. But it didn't stay there. Within days, it was shared in the private Facebook group Golden and Gritty, Women Over 60, Unfiltered, then on Reddit, then Twitter. The pull quote that went viral: "My name was on the deed. My daughter's name was on the invitations. Guess who kept the house?" Marla found out only when Rachel burst into her condo holding a printout with a grin wide enough to split her lipstick. "You're trending," she said breathlessly. "You're the patron saint of boundaries." Marla raised an eyebrow. "Is that an official title?" Rachel wiggled her phone. "You've got emails. Hundreds." They spent a weekend sorting through them. Women from Idaho, Alabama, upstate New York, writing in long, raw paragraphs. Some spoke of grown sons who borrowed their savings, others of daughters who moved in and never left. One woman wrote simply, "I didn't know I was allowed to say no." Marla replied to every single one, sometimes with 3 sentences, sometimes with 10. She signed each message, Marla J., homeowner, human. Rachel looked over her shoulder one night and said, "You're building something here." "I'm just answering people." Rachel shook her head. "Number, you're correcting history." By the following month, Grand Deeds went live. A modest blog, built by Rachel's niece in exchange for a hand-knit scarf and Marla's cranberry pie recipe. The homepage banner read, "Grand Deeds where ownership begins with your name and ends with your voice." Posts were simple, honest. Some were letters, some were lists. One post was titled, 10 Ways to Say Get Out Without Raising Your Blood Pressure. It went viral on day 2. Marla didn't watch the analytics. She just watched the replies. Each comment was another brick in something far sturdier than a house. In March, a neatly folded invitation arrived from the mayor's office. A local panel on elder fraud prevention. Marla was asked to speak. "You sure you want to?" Rachel asked, tying a silk scarf around Marla's neck the morning of the event. "You don't owe anyone anything." "That's the point," Marla said. "Now I get to choose." The auditorium was half filled when they arrived. Folded chairs, coffee in styrofoam cups, a podium with a barely functioning microphone. But when Marla took the stage, something shifted. People leaned forward. Some scribbled notes, some simply stared. She didn't talk about the betrayal. She didn't even say her daughter's name. She said, "When a woman over 60 asserts a boundary, she isn't being difficult. She's being dismissed less." And then, near the end, "We are not burdens. We are not background noise. We are the ones who signed the checks and made the meals and held the walls up with our names. That makes us more than residents. That makes us owners." Silence followed. Then one woman stood, then another. Then the room did. It wasn't applause. Not at first. It was reverence, rising slow and certain like sunrise. That night, Marla and Rachel walked home from the event beneath a stretch of quiet stars. "No one prepares you for what happens after you finally say enough," Rachel said softly. Marla looked up. "Maybe that's the part we write ourselves." Back at home, Marla set down her purse and opened her phone. One voicemail, from a familiar number. She pressed play. Kendra's voice filled the room, tight and small. The message began with silence. 3 seconds of breathy hesitation, just enough to sound rehearsed. Then, "I made a mistake." A sniffle, a pause, "But it's your fault too." Marla sat still in her reading chair, hands folded across her lap, the phone resting like a weightless stone on the side table. Outside, the lake was calm, the surface dappled with early autumn light. Inside, her breath stayed quiet, controlled. Kendra's voice cracked on cue. "I was overwhelmed. I didn't mean to treat you like that. It got complicated, with Braden, and the house, and you being so distant all the time." Another pause. "I know I messed up, but you could fix this. You could add me back, into the trust, the will, just something. That would mean everything." Marla didn't blink. She didn't reach for tissues. She just pressed delete. One tap, gone. She didn't listen to it twice. Later that day, she sat across from Lydia in a small office that smelled like ink and eucalyptus oil diffused by an overachieving receptionist. A high stack of estate folders waited at Lydia's elbow, but the one with Marla's name on it was thin, streamlined, airtight. I need to ask you directly, Marla said. Is my estate bulletproof? Lydia nodded without hesitation. Now it is. No clawback loopholes? No. Lydia tapped the folder. You have a no contest clause, an irrevocable trust, and zero ambiguity about beneficiaries. It's cleaner than most legacy clients twice your net worth. Marla leaned back slightly. I'd like to amend the health directive too. Lydia raised an eyebrow. Still want Rachel as your medical power of attorney? Yes, she's the only one I trust to pull the plug and cut the cord on any drama. They both smiled, but it wasn't exactly a joke. That evening, Marla spread out her estate papers on the dining table. The air smelled faintly of rosemary from the roasted potatoes she hadn't finished. A glass of mint tea steamed beside her pen. Line by line, she reviewed the trust documents. Kendra's name had once been everywhere, in will drafts, emergency contacts, even the funeral preference notes. Now it appeared nowhere. It felt like editing a story she'd never agreed to co-write in the first place. When she reached the primary beneficiary section, she paused, not out of doubt, but to let the moment settle fully. She wrote in neat script, Primary beneficiary, the Haven Women's Housing Initiative, 501c3, a nonprofit that funded transitional homes for women 50+ displaced by financial abuse, divorce, or caregiver burnout. She'd found it through one of her blog readers who said, I would have slept in my car if not for this place. Marla circled the name once, then signed. Final, factual, freeing. That weekend, Rachel brought over cinnamon scones and a copy of The Atlantic with a dog-eared article about generational estrangement. I had a dream, Rachel said, pouring them both chamomile tea, that you lived to 100 and left behind a legacy so sharp they used it to cut inheritance fraud in half. Marla laughed softly. If I make it to 100, I expect a custom headstone with laser engraving? Rachel raised her cup. I'll crowdsource it. On Monday, Marla opened her mailbox and found a plain white envelope. No stamp. Hand-delivered, most likely slipped under the building's mail slot overnight. No return name, no address, just her name in careful cursive, Mrs. Marla Jensen. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, folded into quarters. No greeting, just the words, thank you, for showing the rest of us it's okay to choose ourselves. Someone who needed to see it. Marla stared at it for a long while. It wasn't Kendra's handwriting. She knew that instantly. It was smaller, more tentative, like someone had written it in the dark, hands shaking. She folded it again, slower this time. The first thank you she hadn't questioned in years. The email subject line was unassuming. Grand opening invitation. Haven. Women's housing, East Side location. But the line beneath it stopped Marla's breath for a full 2 seconds. You're listed as an honored namesake. She clicked it open with steady hands, though her fingers tingled at the edges. The first thing she saw was the banner photo. Fresh paint, soft lavender walls, women in donated jeans and shy smiles standing beside tall potted plants and welcome signs, then centered in bold gold letters, the Jensen Empowerment Trust Wing for Women Starting Over Est, by a gift of integrity, not inheritance. Marla's throat caught, not with tears but with awe. No one had told her. She hadn't asked them to. Attached to the email was a simple PDF. Floor plans, donation breakdown, and a quote highlighted in gray. This wing exists because someone had the courage to say, my daughter doesn't define my legacy. Marla leaned back in her chair, exhaling through parted lips. Her tea had gone cold. She didn't care. She arrived at the grand opening wearing a navy blazer and pearl earrings, simple, strong, unshakable. Rachel came with her, holding 2 lavender gift bags for the welcome committee. No one's going to expect a woman who looks like you to be the reason any of this exists, she whispered. That's half the beauty. The air inside the shelter was warm and floral, scented with lavender and something citrusy that hinted at clean starts. Volunteers bustled between stations with clipboards and polite energy. Marla was greeted by a tall woman in a yellow scarf who introduced herself simply as Sam. You must be her, Sam said with the kind of gravity usually reserved for royalty or survivors. I'm Marla Jensen, she replied. You're also a turning point. During the small ceremony, Marla stood quietly in the back until someone handed her a microphone. Just say whatever you'd say to yourself 10 years ago, Sam suggested. She didn't prepare remarks. Didn't need to. She stepped up and looked at the room, young, old, stitched together stories with weathered eyes and cautious postures. She said, I once gave my daughter a home, thinking that love meant silence. Now I give homes to women who finally said something. The room fell still. Then a woman in the third row, hair in a short braid, jacket 2 sizes too big, stood up. Her voice cracked, but she held it steady. You saved me. You don't even know me, but you saved me. Marla didn't cry, but something loosened inside her that had been hard for years. Not broken, just braced. That night, back at her condo, she sat out on the balcony with her knees tucked under a wool blanket. Ducks passed along the edge of the lake in a straight, elegant line. The kind of quiet only earned by people who once lived inside too much noise. She didn't feel proud. She felt placed, like a puzzle piece that had finally stopped pretending it fit elsewhere. Rachel emerged holding 2 mugs of warm cider. If you had to name your superpower, she asked, what would it be? Marla took the mug and thought for a moment. Boundaries, she said. Rachel grinned. That's the one they never see coming. They toasted without clinking, just a nod. Later, as Marla brushed her teeth and changed into her robe, she caught herself reaching for the bedroom door lock out of habit. Her hand hovered, then she let it fall. She left the door wide open, first time in years. The next morning, her email pinged with a new message from a law firm in D.C. The subject line read, Estate Planning Summit, Keynote Inquiry. She clicked it open, half expecting it to be promotional. But no, this was personal. A paragraph down, it read, We're curating a session on legacy versus inheritance. Your story has circulated among our legal advocacy teams. We'd like to formally invite you to speak as our closing keynote. Her name, on a national stage, not because she was someone's mother, but because she'd chosen herself. The ballroom lights dimmed, and a hush fell across the sea of folding chairs and blinking tablets. The kind of quiet that anticipates truth, not entertainment. On stage, beneath a clean white banner that read, Legacy, Not Leverage, Reframing Inheritance, Marla adjusted the lapel of her blazer and stepped up to the mic. She didn't bring notes. She didn't need them. Behind her, on the giant screen, a simple quote filled the space. I gave her a home. She gave me a warning. I gave myself the rest of the story. Marla looked out over the audience, row after row of faces, some professionally unreadable, others already teary. Attorneys, estate planners, financial advisors, adult children, and estranged parents all sharing the same air. When I sold my house, she began, I sold the illusion that being needed is the same as being respected. The silence deepened. A few pens froze mid-scribble. I gave and gave and gave, until my name on the deed meant less than a voice on a guest list. She paused, letting the weight settle. They called it elder isolation. I called it freedom, because once you've been erased inside your own walls, silence becomes your last act of ownership. Until you speak. One soft sob emerged from the 5th row. Marla's voice didn't waver. You don't need a courtroom to reclaim your voice. You need a signature, a spine, and a sense of your own worth that doesn't require permission. The ovation started slow. One woman standing, then another, then an entire block of attendees on their feet. The applause wasn't just loud, it was reverent. Not for the house she let go of, but for the story she refused to. Afterward, she sat behind a folding table as a line formed, longer than she expected, deeper than she could have imagined. A woman in a navy wrap sweater stepped forward with trembling hands. I left after 27 years, told no one, just disappeared. But hearing you today, her voice cracked. You reminded me I'm not a ghost. Marla took her hands. You never were. Another woman brought a copy of Grand Deeds printed off and spiral-bound like a memoir. I read this every time I start doubting my decision. By the 3rd hug, Marla stopped pretending she wasn't crying. Rachel stood just off to the side, arms crossed, eyes shining. You know you're famous now, right? Marla laughed. Infamous, at best. The conference organizers paid for everything: first-class flights, car service, hotel with real linen sheets and robes thick enough to mistake for armor. On the flight back, Marla reclined her seat as Rachel sipped sparkling water beside her. The hum of the engines filled the quiet between them like a lullaby. Marla turned toward the window, watching clouds scroll beneath them like slow-moving poetry. "A clean slate," she said quietly, "weighs less than a cluttered past." Rachel smiled without turning. "You didn't just sell the house, Marla. You bought yourself back." Marla closed her eyes. For the first time in what felt like decades, the altitude didn't make her feel small. It made her feel untethered, in the best way. Back in her condo that evening, suitcase still unopened by the door, Marla poured herself a cup of sleepy tea and settled into the quiet. She opened her laptop to check emails, half expecting the usual inbox. Event invites, estate blog comments, a stray donation notification. But at the very top was a name she didn't recognize. Subject: "I'd like to meet you." The preview line made her still. "Hi. My name's Elle. I think I'm your granddaughter. I'm 17. And I don't want money. I just want to understand who you are, before I turn out like her." Marla's hand hovered over the trackpad, heart suddenly louder than the ticking clock across the room. Marla sat on a weathered park bench beneath a canopy of old sycamores, the early evening breeze curling around her ankles like a cat that knew her name. The lake shimmered in the distance, dusky pinks bleeding into deeper blues. Birds were quiet now, but the cicadas had begun their slow, creaking chorus. She checked her watch. 5 minutes to 6. Then she saw her. A young woman walking alone down the gravel path, shoulders slightly hunched, a hoodie tied around her waist, earbuds dangling from her neck like she wasn't sure if she should be listening or not. Her gait wasn't rushed, but it wasn't casual either. It was cautious, intentionally human. She looked like Kendra, but she didn't move like her. Ella stopped a few feet away. "Are you Marla?" Marla stood slowly, giving the girl time to see her. "I am." Ella nodded. "I wasn't sure if you'd actually come." "I wasn't either," Marla said truthfully. "But I'm here." They sat down on opposite ends of the bench, angled slightly toward the lake. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, it was permission. "I don't want anything," Elle said after a while, her voice tight with nerves. "I'm not here for money. I'm not trying to undo anything." Marla turned toward her gently. "I wouldn't have come if I thought you were." Elle dug her hands into her jacket pockets. "She doesn't know I reached out. I assumed. She talks about you like you vanished, like you abandoned her." Marla didn't flinch. "Did she mention why?" Ella shook her head. "Not really, just said you made it about paperwork. But I read some of your blog. I read that line, the one about boundaries and ownership, and I kept wondering why no one ever taught her how to respect those things." A gust of wind rustled the leaves above them. Somewhere across the lake, a dog barked, distant and aimless. "She taught me how to be loud," Elle said softly. "You're teaching me how to listen." Marla felt the words ripple through her ribcage like the second wave of grief, softer, but more complete. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small sealed envelope, not thick, not flashy, but precise. On the front in ink it read, "L, to be opened, when you've decided what legacy means." Ella stared at it. "What is it?" "A blueprint," Marla said. "My trust guidebook, updated, annotated, real language, no lawyer fog. The kind of document I wish someone had handed me when I was your age." Ella's hands trembled slightly as she took it. "Is this for me?" "Only if you earn the right to keep it." The girl blinked. Not insulted, just absorbing. "I don't want to end up like her," Elle whispered, "but I don't know how to be anything else yet." Marla looked out at the water, the ducks gliding past in a crooked line, graceful in their imperfection. "You've already started," she said. They sat there until the sun slipped behind the tree line and the sky bruised violet. No need for more words, not yet. As they stood to part, Elle paused. "Can I write to you?" Marla smiled. "Please do, but write like it matters." Ella nodded. "Always." They walked in different directions, one to the east side of the park, one toward the parking lot. Marla didn't look back. She didn't need to. She felt the moment land in her chest like the final period of a long, necessary story. This wasn't inheritance. This was instruction. This wasn't repair. It was prevention. This time she wasn't passing down furniture or funds. She was passing down clarity. She was passing down choice. She was passing down voice. She yanked me in public. I let go in peace.